Breaking news tonight, the firestorm inside the Justice Department growing tonight. Attorney General William Barr intervening in the criminal case of another Trump associate, Michael Flynn. What Barr has now ordered, and the president rejecting Barr's calls to stop tweeting about the Justice Department after his explosive comments on Roger Stone. The president saying it's his legal right to interfere if he wants to. The mixed messages as the case against a former top FBI official and frequent Trump critic suddenly dropped. The breakthrough in Afghanistan, a potential truce with the Taliban. Could this pave the way to end America's longest war? The surging deaths from the flu, 14,000 in the U.S., one grieving mother's warning to other parents.
If I could do one thing, I would have made sure she was at the hospital sooner.
Why this season's flu is especially deadly for children. The Bodycam video sparking outrage. Police officers taking a 6-year-old student to be involuntarily committed after she threw a tantrum without telling her mother. The dramatic video, the burning roof collapsing, the firefighter trapped underneath. Seconds later, he crawls out. His condition tonight. And the 5-year-old hailed as a hero, saving his entire family.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. The day after Attorney General William Barr asked President Trump to butt out of Justice Department cases, there are questions tonight about whether the prosecution of the president's disgraced former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, is now the subject of a politically influenced review. The president denying he interfered in the sentencing decisions regarding another convicted close associate, but today claiming such interference is within his power. Here's Peter Alexander.
Tonight, Attorney General William Barr facing new scrutiny for his handling of another criminal case personally important to the president, the prosecution of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The Justice Department recently opening an inquiry into Flynn's interview with the FBI, where he lied to investigators and later pleaded guilty for it. According to two people familiar with the inquiry, Barr last month privately asked an outside prosecutor to re-examine the Flynn case. Around the same time, senior Justice Department officials pressured career prosecutors to recommend probation for Flynn instead of up to 6 months in prison that they had called for.
Sources say that this is another example of Attorney General Barr politicizing cases involving close associates of the president.
It comes as Barr is under fire for overruling career prosecutors in the case of the president's friend Roger Stone, pushing for a lesser punishment for Stone, a decision announced after President Trump blasted the original sentencing recommendation, 7 to 9 years in prison, as very unfair. And tonight, one day after Barr urged the president to knock off the tweets,
I think it's time to stop the tweeting about Department of Justice criminal cases.
President Trump rejecting that rebuke, returning to Twitter, reasserting his authority, insisting, despite evidence to the contrary, that he has so far chosen not to interfere in criminal cases, but proclaiming he has the legal right to do so. There's no law that prevents the president from directing his attorney general how to proceed in Justice Department investigations. But since Watergate, presidents have largely respected the DOJ's independence from the White House.
Good morning.
And tonight, the Justice Department announcing it will not seek criminal charges against former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, a frequent target of the president's.
But Andrew McCabe is a bad guy.
Tonight, McCabe reacting, saying in the United States, the criminal justice system should not be used to seek revenge against a president's perceived political enemies. Lester?
All right, Peter Alexander, thank you. Back to that bombshell now. Attorney General Barr re-examining the case against Michael Flynn with an outside prosecutor. Andrea Mitchell joins us now. Andrea, how unusual is this move?
Well, Lester, this sets off all sorts of political alarms. First, former officials say if there are concerns, they should call in the inspector general, not a prosecutor. Second, Flynn now wants to withdraw his guilty plea, saying the FBI surprised him. But former prosecutors saying being surprised is no excuse for lying to the FBI. That's a crime. And third, the Justice Department overruled Flynn's proposed sentence from 6 months to probation, raising suspicions that even though the president has authority to pardon, he may be trying to make a political case to pardon Flynn. Lester?
All right, Andrea, thank you. Michael Avenatti, the lawyer who represented porn actress Stormy Daniels in lawsuits against President Trump, was found guilty today of trying to extort tens of millions of dollars from Nike. Prosecutors said Avenatti wanted the money to keep silent about evidence he said he had involving misconduct by Nike employees in recruiting college basketball players. There's breaking news about the first steps toward a deal with the Taliban to end the war in Afghanistan, which could mean American troops coming home. Richard Engel has late details.
U.S. officials tell NBC News tonight a framework is in place to potentially end America's longest war, though it remains a fragile work in progress. First, the Taliban would have to implement a significant and demonstrable reduction of violence for at least a week. The U.S. and the Taliban would then sign an agreement, the U.S. drawing down troops from around 13,000 to about 8,600, possibly with more to follow. Since 9/11, nearly 2,500 American troops have been killed in Afghanistan. President Trump has pushed to pull troops out.
We are working to finally end America's longest war,
highlighting a soldier's homecoming at his State of the Union.
Richard, you also spoke to Iran's foreign minister today about the air defense operator who accidentally shot down that passenger jet. Let's play that.
He thought it was a missile coming in.
That's what he said.
Taking off from the Tehran International Airport.
And that
going up.
Yeah. All our radars showed that it was going up.
But you're saying this is one person's human error?
One person's human error. We need to find out. We need to investigate this.
Richard, did he go on to explain why Iran originally lied about shooting the plane down?
He did. He said military officials in Iran knew before anyone else, but needed a few days to conduct preliminary investigations before they told civilian officials, who then went public. Lester?
All right, Richard, thank you. Now to the coronavirus. Passengers on a cruise ship were finally able to get off, but thousands on another ship are still locked down as pressure to develop a vaccine intensifies. Here's Janice Mackey-Freyer.
Tonight, relief for thousands on board the Holland America cruise ship after being rejected by 5 countries over fears of coronavirus, finally allowed to dock in Cambodia. More than 2,000 people stuck at sea for 2 weeks, grateful to set foot on land. Here in Yokohama, the Diamond Princess still locked down in port. Thousands, including 428 Americans, remain on board with no firm exit date.
If the numbers of people, of new cases keep increasing, what will we do then?
The toll of the virus being felt across the world. Businesses losing money. Tourism is suffering. Beijing setting new rules today for anyone visiting the city. 14 days of self-quarantine, now the law. Scientists are racing to develop a vaccine. NBC's Richard Engel spoke with one of them.
Where there is no underlying population immunity, you would expect perhaps up to 60 or 67% of the population to become infected.
Of the world population?
Yes, essentially.
That's billions of people.
That's billions of people.
Here in Japan, authorities taking no chances as passengers find ways to pass the time until their quarantine is over. Janice Mackey-Freyer, NBC News, Yokohama, Japan.
And while much of our attention has been focused on coronavirus, the CDC here at home is warning the flu is widespread in 44 states and proving to be deadly, especially for children. Here's Tom Costello.
16-year-old Katie Giovanello was homesick with the flu after going to an urgent care clinic, but days later suddenly went into cardiac arrest.
If I could do one thing, I would have never even took her home Sunday. I would have made sure she was at the hospital sooner. I didn't know.
Today, the CDC said 14,000 people in the U.S. have died from the flu this season, 92 of them children, more than most years. Most of them have had the Influenza B strain. Influenza B hasn't been around since 1993, so anybody born after 93 may not have the necessary immunity. That could put kids more at risk. The warning signs that it's time to get a child to the ER: a high fever that won't go down, confusion, chest pain or trouble breathing, muscle pain, and dehydration.
They haven't peed in over 8 hours. They're crying, but they're not making tears. Their lips and mouth are dry. Their eyes are sunken.
5-year-old Lachlan DeSantis died in the ER after going into septic shock from the flu, the virus attacking his organs. Neither Katie nor Lachlan had a flu shot this season. Tonight, doctors insist it's still not too late to get the flu shot protection. Tom Costello, NBC News, Bethesda, Maryland.
After moving through the Midwest tonight, a dangerous Arctic blast is moving into the Northeast, where it'll be the coldest night of the year. Tomorrow, parts of New England will drop to as low as 20 degrees below zero. In court today, prosecutors gave closing arguments in the Harvey Weinstein trial. NBC's Stephanie Gosk on their final message before the jury begins deliberations next week.
Prosecutor Jonah Luzzi did not mince her words. Harvey Weinstein, once one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, she said, is an abusive rapist. Luzzi described Weinstein as the master of his universe, and the witnesses here were merely ants that he could step on without consequences. Luzzi argued that the Hollywood producer used his power and influence to prey on women who were looking for a break in the industry. The defense argued the communication Weinstein had with accusers after the alleged assaults proved the relationships were consensual. Luzzi pushed back, telling the jury he made sure he had contact with the people he was worried about. That's the mark of a predator. Luzzi addressed the years-long relationship that Jessica Mann maintained with Weinstein, even after she alleges he raped her in a New York hotel. She could have been writing him love notes every single day. It still wouldn't make a difference. He still would not be allowed to rape her. Weinstein pleaded not guilty to all 5 charges, challenging the accuser's credibility. His defense team speaking outside of court.
I think he's confident, and this is a tough situation for anybody to be in.
Now the wait begins. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
We'll be right back in 60 seconds with the outrage after a 6-year-old girl is taken from school to a mental health facility and held for 2 days. And 2 years after America's deadliest high school shooting, new concerns about active shooter drills. A Florida family is outraged tonight as new body cam video shows officers taking a 6-year-old student to be involuntarily committed after a tantrum without her mother's permission. Here's Miguel Almaguer.
You're not no bad person.
The edited body camera footage shows officers escorting a 6-year-old girl out of school and to a nearby mental health facility where she would be committed for 2 days.
You gonna be good?
The school says they were following standard protocol after staff said she was destroying school property, attacking staff, and out of control. The officers transporting little Nadia, who is diagnosed with ADHD and a mood disorder, noting her good behavior.
She's been actually very pleasant.
This is something that you can't take lightly. This could be anybody's child.
Nadia's mother and her attorney, shocked a contracted social worker hired by the school district used the Baker Act to have a 6-year-old committed at a mental health facility where they claim she was given antipsychotic medication.
She can only tell you bits and pieces. Mommy, they locked the door. They wouldn't let me out. Mommy, they gave me a shot.
The controversial Baker Act gives social workers in Florida the power to initiate involuntary holds on children as young as 2 without the need for parental permission.
Tonight in Jacksonville, outrage over an alleged outburst and how it was handled. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
A solemn milestone tonight as the nation marks 2 years since the worst high school mass shooting in U.S. history. There are new questions about whether active shooter drills in schools are doing more harm than good. Here's Kerry Sanders.
A moment of silence in Parkland, Florida today. 2 years ago, a former student walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School and opened fire, killed 17 students and staff.
I think about it every single day.
Sari Kaufman was a 15-year-old sophomore.
Policy change isn't nearly as difficult as losing a loved one.
The carnage sparked a call for gun control and political action. Now Kaufman questions a trend sweeping schools nationwide. The unannounced lockdown, active shooter drills.
It scares you, it bothers you?
Yeah. The shooter drills now are extremely scary, and you don't know if what's going on and if it's true or not.
This week, a new report endorsed by 2 of the nation's largest teachers' unions concludes a $2.7 billion industry has grown up around the anguish of parents and school staff. But there is extremely limited research available on the drill's effectiveness.
I think they can be traumatizing to children, at least cause anxiety. I think it's completely unnecessary.
In South Florida, school officials defending the program.
You've got to do some type of drill. You have to do some type of preparedness.
The accused gunman, 21-year-old Nicholas Cruz, is yet to stand trial. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, a tragedy survivors wish they could forget, but want everyone to remember. Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Parkland.
In our NBC News investigation, a new voting system in Los Angeles County to be rolled out for Super Tuesday. That one county has more voters than many states, and the system costs hundreds of millions. But as Cynthia McFadden tells us, some are raising questions.
So, 10 years and almost $300 million later, mission accomplished?
I think so.
L.A. County Registrar Dean Logan has supervised the development of the new voting system.
This is a system that produces a paper ballot. It is a human-readable paper ballot that you can go back and audit and count.
But many, like computer science professor Richard DeMillo, say these machine-produced paper ballots are fraught with problems. They can be hacked, and they can make technical errors.
If you could design the perfect voting system, what would it look like?
Individual voters marking their choices on a piece of paper.
But Logan says since LA voters can review their machine-produced ballots, they can catch any inaccuracies. Except studies show most people don't review their ballots at all.
We found that voters were spending on the average of 222 milliseconds verifying a ballot with 18 ballot choices on it.
On the other hand, Logan says there is one thing ballots filled out by hand cannot do: provide accessibility.
This is the first system that allows a voter with a disability to vote completely independently a secret ballot for the first time.
To say that we all have to adopt an insecure technology puts the entire election at risk, and that can't be the price of accessibility.
DeMillo cites a report commissioned by the California Secretary of State, which chronicles a wide variety of security issues.
I think at first reading, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying?
Yes, because there are things that are clear security vulnerabilities in the system that are brushed aside.
While Logan says many of the issues have been corrected, some will not be addressed until just months before November's election.
It's very high stakes. It's the sort of thing that would keep any clerk recorder awake at night.
Beverly Hills has sued, complaining that only 4 candidates appear on the touchscreen at a time and that voters must press a button labeled "More" to see additional candidates. Logan says the button is now bigger and surrounded by bright yellow. Meanwhile, Plan B, the Secretary of State is requiring voting centers to have backup paper ballots on hand. Lester?
All right, Cynthia, thank you. I want to show you a piece of video now that is simply remarkable. A close call for a veteran firefighter in Dallas. Captain Ronald Yanek was battling a fire outside a building this morning when part of a roof fell right on top of him. He was able to crawl to safety through burning debris. He suffered several injuries, but the department says he is expected to be okay. And that's why we call them the bravest. Up next, how a 5-year-old hero saved his family. A 5-year-old boy in Georgia is being hailed as a hero for saving his entire family. Here's Blaine Alexander.
There's a new firefighter in town. 5-year-old Noah Woods.
This is how I got burned.
You got burned right here. Noah's family was asleep Sunday. His mom, Tabitha, awakened by their barking dog. Then she saw smoke coming from Noah's room.
I was so scared that they were still trapped in there.
But Noah knew exactly what to do.
How did you get your sister out?
I picked her up.
You picked her up? And carried her out the window?
Yeah.
In the end, the whole family made it out alive. Turns out his mom had been teaching him fire safety all along.
So we had to make sure he knew to go to the window, stay low to the ground from smoke, do not touch doorknobs.
Now, a new holiday here for the brave little boy who faced fire and won. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Cartersville, Georgia.
Super job. Next, why they're calling this guy the Shirley Temple Kid. On this Valentine's Day, a boy who's become an expert in a certain pink drink. Here's Katie Beck.
At the iconic Plaza Hotel, royalty arrives in a cardigan and sneakers.
Welcome to the Plaza, Shirley Temple King.
Thank you.
The Shirley Temple King. He needs no introduction to his nearly 300,000 Instagram fans.
Just enough grenadine, just enough ice.
6-year-old Leo Kelly shares his refined taste.
It's good, but it's not wowing me.
For one specific cocktail,
I like the classic way of making it.
Canada Dry Ginger Ale, roses, grenadine, 3 cherries, served on ice in the environmentally friendly way, in a glass with a reusable straw.
It actually tastes like the ones that I make.
His scoring scale, tougher than most.
Most people rate their drinks like 1 to 10, but what is your scale?
Not 1 to 9.5, because it's impossible to get the perfect Shirley Temple.
As for today's,
I would give it a 9.1.
A high score from a small connoisseur.
Are you going to add other drinks? Or are you going to just stick with Shirley's?
I think I'm going to stick with Shirley's, but also go undercover.
Service industry beware. Best to make Shirley Temples fit for a king. Katie Beck, NBC News, New York.
And I'd give that story a 10. Cheers, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm Lester Holt. Good night. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.